In this lesson, we'll begin the process of manipulating and distorting facial features of our male subject by starting with the nose. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so now that we have our sketch established based off of our photo here of our angry guy, we have a visual roadmap to basically follow and refer to. And so now we're ready to start basically manipulating and distorting the facial features of our guy here and really push him towards the visual representation of our sketch. So with that said, let's go ahead and navigate over here to our layers panel, and we'll go ahead and hide the visibility of our concept sketch group containing all that sketch information. And you'll notice I have a couple of additional layers in addition to our background. And what I've done is basically taken the liberty of isolating our male subject from that original background of the photo. And this allows us to focus just on making distortions and manipulations to our subject here without pulling in any of that background information from the photo. You'll also notice that I kind of completed out the rest of the neck. I did a little bit of cloning to just kind of finish out the neck. If we quickly refer back to our photo, you'll see that that information just isn't available to us. And so I've basically done that just so our final product will look a little bit more complete. Now you'll also notice that I've separated the head from the neck. We're going to be focusing on just the head over the next several lessons, making manipulations and distortions. And so I really don't want the neck to be included in any of those manipulations. Now you'll also notice that I've titled this layer base head. So this is just kind of our base. I don't really want to make any destructive edits to this layer containing the head, just in case I need to come back to it. All right. So what we're going to do is basically right click, and we're going to go to duplicate layer, and we'll call this layer nose. So we're going to be focusing on the nose first. It's just a great spot to start with this particular image, just because a lot of his emotion and anger seems to really be represented nicely just with all those scrunched up lines, all those scrunched up areas of skin. So just a great spot to start. So next we want to start basically manipulating the nose, shrinking it down, moving it upward, just like we did in our sketch. And again, that sketch is really useful because it saves us just a lot of creative guesswork along the way. We now have kind of a visual idea of how we want to basically change up this overall face. So let's go up here to the very top where it says filter. And about a third of the way down, you'll see where it says liquefy. The shortcut on your keyboard is Shift-Control-X. So now we're in the liquefy dialog box, and you can see we're only focusing on the head since that's the layer that we're on. And if you want to know just more about liquefy, definitely check out our Introduction to Photoshop course, where really you can just get a good extensive amount of information about this interface. So basically what we have are a series of tools over here on the screen left of the dialog box. Each one of these tools will allow us to basically make distortions and manipulations to whatever it is we're working on. Now over here to the screen right, we have a series of settings that we can use to really fine-tune each one of these tools as we use them. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. And we want to just focus on the nose, and we don't really want to affect anything around it. So the first tool I want to use is our freeze mask tool. So we can basically mask out any information that we don't want affected. Now our brush size is pretty small right now. So if we come over here to where it says Tool Options, over here to the screen right, we can size up our brush. And so I don't want the mouth to be affected, nor do I want the eyes or the cheeks. And we don't really want to affect the upper brow either. Okay, so we have the nose is basically isolated at this point. Okay, so we want to go ahead and shrink it down. So a great tool to do this is our pucker tool. And this basically just pulls pixels inward. Now we want to go ahead and increase the size of our brush. So over here for our tool options, we'll go ahead and bring our brush size up pretty large. So I'm just kind of hovering my cursor over his nose just to kind of see how large I want it, and that feels about right. Now we have a couple of additional settings here that we also want to take heed to. We have our brush density, and this basically controls the brush edge strength. The lower we go, the more concentrated the puckering will be towards the center of the brush, kind of towards that little cross point. If we bring it all the way up to 100%, it'll be completely unified all the way to the outer edge of the brush as we pucker all those pixels inward. And then, of course, the brush rate just controls the overall speed in which all of this happens as we hold down our brush over our area that we want to focus on. So let's go ahead and just kind of start with this. So I'm just holding down, and we can see how that nose and that overall area with the wrinkles above the nose is kind of being shrunken downwards. So I'm liking how that's looking. Let's go ahead now and decrease our brush size just a little bit. I want to focus just on the nose now, not really so much those wrinkles above anymore. We're starting to kind of shrink that down. Now let's go ahead and change gears and come over here to the upper screen left. We're going to grab our forward warp tool. And this is going to allow us to basically move stuff in different directions. So we're going to be able to move pixels in areas in which we drag our brush. So we have some similar settings over here under our tool options. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of go with the settings we have. I'm just kind of pulling up this nose with our forward warp tool. Now you'll notice we're getting some stretched pixel information around the nose. That's kind of inevitable even with our mask. So we'll eventually come back in there and using our healing brush tool kind of repair some of that information, just because we do want to preserve the skin pores as we move forward, because that's going to prove useful later on as we start to really add and weave in additional textures and photographic elements into the skin. Having those pores preserved will really just make our character look really nice. So we may want to go ahead and shrink his nose down just slightly a little bit more. So let's come back to our pucker tool. We'll go ahead and size down our brush just a little bit. And I'm just kind of tapping a few times at this point. Just kind of shrinking that nose down. And we'll go ahead and grab our forward warp tool and let's just move it up just a little bit more. Shrink down our brush just a little bit more too, our brush size. I'm kind of trying to preserve just those nostrils. They were kind of getting flattened out just a little bit. All right, very nice. Let's go ahead and commit to these changes. So we'll come up here to where it says OK. And now we can see what a huge change we've already made. Again, we're trying to push these different facial features to be further away from appearing human. And so we've already started to achieve that with the nose. And we can make a quick comparison by turning off the visibility of our nose layer. And what a difference that's already made. Now again, we have some of that stretched information down there. So what we can do is come over here to our tool panel and we can grab our healing brush tool. All right, let's go ahead and zoom in. And let's go ahead and right click and we'll increase the size of our brush tip. And we'll go ahead and hold down Alt and just sample from some of these surrounding skin pores. Again, I want to continue to maintain the skin pores as we move forward, as we start to basically move around these different facial attributes, rather than try and do it all towards the end. Again, having those skin pores is really going to prove nicely as we start to weave in additional textures and photographic elements. If we try to wait till towards the end to really start to preserve the skin, there's not going to be a lot to sample from because there may be additional areas that have been stretched. And so it would just be really hard. So what I'm doing now, again, is I'm just holding down Alt, and I'm just kind of sampling from just some of the close surrounding areas. And so what this does is it basically clones in that information and kind of weaves it in based off of the information that's already there. And so I try not to go too far out as I do this, just because those pixels might not make as much sense. If we sample from way out here, we can see how that really doesn't help that particular area. So I tried again, just sample pretty close. We want to kind of clean up and maintain these stretched areas as we go. And this just comes back to the importance of having a mask. Even though the mask isn't going to prevent some stretching, it definitely saves a lot of other areas that could have been affected otherwise, areas that you don't really want to focus on just yet. So we're just kind of continuing to come around here, just kind of cleaning up some of these different spots. All right, so that's looking really nice. I'm liking the direction that we're going and just changing up our facial features. So in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and start to work on the jaw area. If you recall from our sketch, we wanted to basically extend his jaw downward further than what would be normally humanly possible. So stick around and we'll see you in that lesson.